What if God's first enemy wasn't a fallen angel, but an ancient god who dared to challenge an entire pantheon? In the shadows of ancient Sumerian clay tablets, a name emerges, whispered with both reverence and heresy: Enki, god of wisdom, lord of the deep waters, the hidden architect of human destiny. While other gods ruled through violence and fear, Enki wielded the weapon of knowledge. His rebellion wasn't driven by war, but by freedom. To him, humanity wasn't a race of servants, but of students. Myths tell of how Enki defied the will of Enlil, the stern and wrathful god who saw humans as creatures to be controlled and punished. When plagues and a great flood were unleashed to wipe out mankind, it was Enki who, in secret, guided humans to survive. A betrayal in the eyes of the gods, or an act of salvation for humanity? Ancient fragments depict a serpentine figure, a god tied to wisdom, mystery, and the forbidden, a being who descended from the stars, not to rule, but to set free. Here lies the first dilemma. Could Enki be the original archetype of the serpent in Eden? His story buried beneath layers of myth and religious reinterpretation. Questions rise like hidden fire beneath the ashes. Why do the texts glorifying Enlil as supreme god diminish Enki's role? Why were the records showing Enki as humanity's protector erased, altered, or reduced to fragments? And what if the true sin wasn't rebellion, but the courage to give humans what the gods wanted to keep secret? Dark legends describe his mind as dangerously cunning, his heart as subversive, his actions as a cosmic scandal. Yet his shadow echoes through time, hidden under different names in different cultures. Enki's rebellion didn't die in Sumer, it crossed millennia, becoming entangled with another narrative, one that speaks of a bearer of light. But this connection remains shrouded in darkness. With each taboo revealed, an even more dangerous truth waits to surface. Enki didn't just disobey, he redefined the line between slavery and freedom. And perhaps that's why his story was buried. If Enki's crime was giving humanity the spark of wisdom, then maybe the greatest conspiracy in history wasn't against the gods, but against humanity itself. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments. What if the most feared angel in the Bible wasn't a villain at all, but the messenger of enlightenment, a truth we were never meant to see? The name Lucifer stirs fear, condemnation, and silence, yet its Latin root is clear. Lux fer, the bringer of light. Light is not destruction. Light is revelation. It is not about falling, but about rising. We've been given the image of a cursed, banished being. But what if behind that demonic mask lies a symbol of freedom? Much like Enki was in ancient Sumer, the earliest scriptures never described him as the ruler of hell. That image was shaped centuries later through political and religious manipulation. The prophet Isaiah speaks of a morning star that falls from the heavens. In the original Hebrew, the name was Hillel ben Shachar, son of the dawn, a poetic image, not one of terror. Turning him into the ultimate villain was a human choice, not a divine truth. And here lies the dilemma. Why should the bringer of light be hated? What did it truly mean to bring light to humanity? Could it be that Lucifer, like Enki, dared to give humankind what higher powers wanted to keep hidden? In forgotten and suppressed apocryphal texts, there are traces of a figure who questions, who breaks the rules, who challenges imposed orders. Rebellion not as evil, but as courage. How many times has history followed this same pattern? A being who offers knowledge is painted as a traitor. The guardian of truth is recast as the enemy. What if the true forbidden light was consciousness itself? What if Lucifer's fall was never about punishment, but a metaphor, a choice between standing against oppressive power or remaining in the comfort of ignorance? These questions echo like thunder. Why does the name Lucifer almost disappear from modern Bible translations? Who decided that bringer of light should become a symbol of darkness? And what was truly at stake when such powerful symbols were reversed? The image of the radiant angel cast out of heaven is not just a tale of punishment, it is a tale of fear. The fear of rulers that humankind might awaken beyond their control. The fear that truth might dissolve blind obedience. The fear that the fire of light might shatter invisible chains. Lucifer, like Enki, didn't need to destroy to triumph. He only needed to reveal. And it was precisely that revelation that made him dangerous. The great crime of both was not chaos, but the audacity to open humanity's eyes. If light and wisdom have been declared a sin, then maybe the true hell isn't beneath us at all. But within every lie we've been taught to believe, what if the story of two rebels, separated by millennia, was really just the same truth told with different names? In ancient Sumer, Enki defied divine decrees to protect humanity. In later scriptures, Lucifer broke the heavenly order to bring light and awareness. Two myths, two cultures, but one single essence. The archetype of the rebel who refuses to let mankind live in darkness. Both were branded as traitors. Both were portrayed as enemies of heaven. Both carried the burden of challenging supreme authority. But what truly bound them was something far more dangerous. The will to give freedom. And freedom is always a threat to those who rule through fear. Look closely, and the lines begin to blur. The serpent offering forbidden fruit. The morning star bringing the first light of dawn. The god of the waters, shielding his children from a destruction decreed by higher powers. All signs of the same hidden pattern, a being who challenges, liberates, and pays the ultimate price for breaking the chains. And then comes the unsettling question. Could Lucifer simply be the biblical translation of a much older myth? Could Enki, the ancient rebel god, have been reborn in scripture as the angel of light? His image twisted so we would never uncover the truth? The fragmented records leave us with haunting echoes. In both tales, rebellion is portrayed as a fall, but beneath the surface lies another meaning, compassion. The compassion of one who dares to give humanity what they were never meant to have. Knowledge awakening the forbidden fire. But why turn a liberator into a villain? Who benefits from turning symbols of light into symbols of darkness? Who profits from keeping humanity blind, obedient, unquestioning? Perhaps the answer is simple and cruel. Truth is too dangerous. Freedom is the greatest sin in the eyes of those who crave control. And so Enki and Lucifer became reflections of each other, shadows of the same. Story repeating endlessly, as if time itself were a mirror. If the one who frees is always condemned, maybe the greatest secret of all is this. History was never written to reveal the truth, but to protect the invisible thrones that still rule today. Subscribe, what comes next is even darker. What if the most feared figure of Eden wasn't evil itself, but the symbol of the wisdom we were never meant to have? The serpent weaves through cultures, myths, and time. To the Sumerians, it was Enki in his winding form, the guardian of knowledge, the messenger of forbidden secrets. To Christians, it became the embodiment of evil, temptation, and original sin. But why would the same symbol be demonized? The answer may be simple. Truth is far more dangerous than lies. At his core, Enki was the silent god, teaching, warning, offering choices. Later scriptures gave Lucifer the same role, to bring light to those lost in the darkness of ignorance. And it's this duality, the serpent that teaches and the star that shines, that was twisted into a weapon of collective fear. When we look back at ancient tablets, the symbols repeat. The serpent's curves, the flowing rivers, the forbidden fruit. Everything points to the serpent as a sign of transformation and wisdom, not destruction. But those who guard power had every reason to distort its meaning. Wisdom isn't meant to be given freely, it's meant to be controlled. Then comes the unsettling question. What did eating the forbidden fruit truly mean? Was it an act of sin or an act of freedom? Enki offered humanity the right to think, to question, to grow. The serpent doesn't bite or punish, it awakens. It represents the courage to shatter invisible chains, to open one's eyes to a reality carefully hidden. These ancient stories reveal a deeper layer, the serpent as a bridge between the divine and the human, between knowledge and consciousness. Every curve, every movement, is a reminder that forbidden light has always existed. Only a few dared to embrace it. So what if the fear of the serpent was really fear of the truth? What if the promised punishment wasn't for disobedience, but for the power humanity could gain by uncovering the secrets denied to them. Perhaps the serpent was never the villain. Perhaps we were trained to fear the very light it brought. Share this with someone who needs to see what was hidden. What if the serpent who offered Eve the forbidden fruit wasn't Satan at all, but the very God who gave us the spark of consciousness? Hidden among forgotten texts and ancient translations lies a chilling theory. Enki may have been the serpent of Eden, the messenger who dared to defy higher powers to enlighten humanity. The forbidden fruit wasn't a trap, but a gift of knowledge, an act of rebellion with a purpose. In the official narrative, original sin is humanity's fault. But look deeper, and the real blame falls on the divine elite who wanted to keep humans blind and obedient. Enki, much like Lucifer, dared to teach, to offer choices, to break the invisible chains. Serpent or morning star, the form doesn't matter, only the essence awakening the sleeping eyes of mankind. In apocryphal manuscripts, fragments emerge that strengthen this connection. Knowledge appears as light, disobedience is framed as courage, and the serpent becomes a symbol of transformation, in a stark contrast to the official version, where a savior is recast as a villain, and a hero is buried beneath the veil of sin. But what if the biblical story was altered from the very beginning? What if Enki was humanity's true ally, and history was rewritten to turn liberators into enemies? Why reshape the truth this way? Who benefits from portraying rebellion as evil and courage as sin? The serpent as Enki doesn't just teach, it challenges our entire perception of right and wrong. It forces us to ask, what does it truly mean to know? Who decides what we should or shouldn't learn? And what if the forbidden fruit was merely humanity's first step toward the light? In the silent halls of history, every symbol, every taboo, every forgotten legend points to a disturbing pattern. Those who free others are always hunted. The wisdom given to us became a crime in the eyes of those who control the myth. Cliffhanger: if the serpent was truly Enki, then the real sin isn't disobedience, but forgetting the truth he brought. Have you ever wondered about this? Share your thoughts in the comments. What if the greatest lie in history wasn't about humanity, but about the very bearer of light? Christian tradition tells us that Lucifer fell from heaven, condemned for pride and rebellion. But in ancient texts, forgotten or deliberately hidden, his fall is told differently. A rebellion against divine tyranny, an attempt to give humanity what had been denied to them. What appears to be punishment may have been an act of courage. Much like Enki, Lucifer was painted as a villain because he challenged power. Both revealed a dangerous truth. Blind obedience is not a virtue, it's a prison. But while Enki was disguised as a serpent, Lucifer was recast as a fallen angel. The stories were rewritten to hide their true purpose, to set humanity free. What do the apocryphal gospels and suppressed texts reveal? That the fall wasn't a failure, it was a choice to enlighten, to teach, to open humanity's eyes. An act of love and defiance that threatened invisible structures of control. Every translation that turned light into darkness was another layer of manipulation. Questions spark like embers in the dark. Why is pride condemned, but blind submission praised? Who benefits from demonizing those who show the path to freedom? And what if the story of the fall was fabricated to hide the true roles of Lucifer and Enki? Every symbol, every distorted version, every buried metaphor points to the same truth. The fear of enlightenment is ancient. The fall doesn't mean defeat, it's a warning. Those who dare to challenge ignorance are hunted, their actions buried beneath censorship and myth. If Enki and Lucifer share the same fate, it's because truth is terrifying. Rebellion is punished, courage is silenced, and wisdom is turned into a crime, a cycle that repeats, unseen but relentless. And if the fall itself is a lie, then the story we've been told about, heroes and villains, might be the greatest conspiracy of all, one that could still be shaping our minds today. Like this post, if even a part of it made you feel uncomfortable. What if the real enemy was never Lucifer or Enki, but another god? One whose severity shaped the entire narrative of fear. Enlil, brother of Enki, emerges as a central figure in Sumerian lore. The god who demands absolute obedience, who sees humanity as servants, who decides life and death with cold detachment. His rivalry with Enki may hold the key to why liberators were demonized. While Enki offered knowledge, Enlil imposed rules and punishments. The official story turned this struggle into a fable of good versus evil, erasing its deeper nuances. Looking closely at ancient texts, a strategy becomes clear: turn the bringer of freedom into the villain, and the enforcer into supreme authority. The fear of Enlil transcends cultures. He becomes the archetype of the severe god, the invisible tyrant who keeps us subdued, who turns light into sin and disobedience into crime. Unsettling questions arise. Why does the narrative always exalt obedience and punish boldness? Could Enlil be the true author of the myth of original sin? And what if the story of evil was written to safeguard the privileges of the celestial elite? The relationship between Enki and Enlil is not mere conflict, it is an ideological war. One teaches, the other represses. One liberates, the other controls. And in this clash, what remains for humanity? Fragments of distorted truths, inverted symbols, heroes turned into villains. What if the entire image of Lucifer as a corrupter is nothing more than a shadow cast by the fear Enlil inspired? What we were told about pride, sin, and the fall may simply echo ancient rivalries, disguised as religious morality. The shadow of Enlil looms over every tale of disobedience, every myth of forbidden revelation, every symbol of light denied. Perhaps the true enemy was never the serpent or the morning star, but the invisible hand shaping history, deciding who may know the truth. Subscribe. The truth doesn't end here. What if humanity's greatest revolution began with a spark that was deliberately hidden from us? Enki and Lucifer shared the same fate, bringing knowledge to humankind. Yet every act of illumination was treated as a crime. Every revelation was twisted into sin. The light meant to awaken consciousness became taboo, dangerous, forbidden. Those who dared to deliver wisdom were branded as traitors, villains, enemies of heaven. And what is this light? It is not destruction, but understanding. Not chaos, but perception. Enki taught humanity to master the elements, to grasp the world around them. Lucifer offered vision, the spark of discernment, the courage to question. Both face the same problem: power always fears awakened minds. From Sumerian texts to apocryphal gospels, the message repeats itself. Knowledge is strength, but ignorance is safety for the powerful. Every revelation is a threat, every lesson a challenge to imposed order. And yet, those who dared to teach still inspire. Quietly between the lines of history, questions arise sharp as blades. Why do we fear truth so much that it must be forbidden? Who benefits when the light is hidden and humanity remains blind? Could every taboo we follow be nothing more than a construction to keep control intact? The spark of consciousness is dangerous because it awakens freedom. It uncovers what was concealed, shatters invisible chains, and defies rules that were never just. Enki and Lucifer did not bring destruction, they brought choice. And choice frightens more than war. Even under persecution, censorship, and distortion, the light endures. Every symbol, every myth, every forgotten story testifies that the truth of knowledge has always been within reach. Few dare to seek it. Perhaps the greatest crime is not disobedience, but allowing the light to be forbidden while humanity continues to sleep in the shadows of ignorance. Tag someone who would dare to watch until the end. What if the greatest battle of all was never fought in the heavens, but within the very narrative of history itself? Ancient texts speak of clashes between gods, conflicts that may sound mythological today, but could conceal real struggles between cosmic and ideological forces. Enki and Lucifer, both symbols of rebellion and light, faced adversaries who sought to keep humanity in chains. Enlil and the other Anunnaki. It was not a war of weapons, but of knowledge, influence, and control. Every choice, every act of defiance was recorded, but reinterpreted. Enki's rebellion was recast as betrayal, Lucifer's boldness as sin. While the official story glorifies obedience and demonizes questioning, the forgotten fragments reveal a struggle for the right to teach, to liberate, to illuminate, questions cut like blades. Who truly won this so-called celestial war? Was Lucifer's fall and Enki's alleged sin a real defeat or historical manipulation? Does humanity remain a prisoner of a narrative designed to silence those who dared to set us free? The symbols repeat: serpents, morning stars, intertwining rivers, each suggesting the battle was never just external, but symbolic. Every myth of war mirrors the tension between control and freedom, fear and courage, darkness and light. What if the true aim of divine rivalry was not ruling the universe, but shaping human perception? What if the war of the gods was, in fact, a war for the human mind and heart, for what we are allowed to know, believe, or doubt? The consequences of that conflict still surround us. The censorship of truth, the inversion of symbols, the manipulation of myths and stories all point to the same conclusion. The celestial war never ended. It merely changed its stage. If the battle for knowledge is still ongoing, then perhaps the greatest enemy is not visible, but hidden within the narratives we accept without question. If this disturbed you, that was the point. Leave a comment. What if everything we were told was nothing more than the convenient version of history, carefully crafted and manipulated? Ancient texts, apocryphal gospels, Sumerian manuscripts, and oral traditions all point to a different reality. Enki and Lucifer, long portrayed as villains, may have been humanity's greatest allies. Those who dared to bring light, knowledge, and freedom were rewritten as traitors, erased from official narratives, turned into warnings against disobedience. Every symbol, every myth, every taboo reveals a pattern of manipulation. History shaped to preserve obedience, concentrate power, and protect ignorance. The serpent was not betrayal, it was wisdom. Lucifer was not corruption, he was illumination. Enki was not the enemy, he was the liberator. But decades, centuries, millennia of censorship turned heroes into villains and courage into sin. Final questions echo like thunder in the mind. If truth was hidden, why do we accept simplified and distorted versions? Who profited by inverting symbols of light and darkness? And what if the history we were taught in school, religion, and culture was nothing but a theater of manipulation? Perhaps every myth, every taboo, every forgotten legend points us toward a reality we still fear to face. If the light of knowledge is forbidden, then the greatest sin of all may be choosing to live in the shadows of ignorance. The story of Enki and Lucifer leaves us with an unsettling question that spans the ages. If those who gave us freedom were demonized, what else has been hidden from us? Perhaps the true rebellion is not against gods or angels, but against the invisible control that decides what we are allowed to know, believe, and question. Perhaps the light denied to us still waits, ready to awaken within each of us. And what if it's all real? Write your truth below.